The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to SMARTA series of webinars. This is the first webinar that SMARTA organizes. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very good number of people that chose to spend the next hour with us, and we are extremely grateful that you register in such a good number. We will wait a few more seconds to allow more people to come, because I can see that are coming a lot of people at this moment. There are many people registering at this moment. So if you allow me, we'll start a few more minutes, a few more seconds to do it. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. We'll allow a few more seconds, yeah, to allow people to come. Thank you once again. I think it's 1 minute past 3. This webinar is very short. It's only 1 hour. You will have access to the registration of this webinar later on the website of SMARTA. Once again, thank you for joining. Many people are joining us. We have almost 100 people registered as attendees at this moment. So SMARTA is a project that looked at the rural mobility, what's happening in rural mobility across Europe and beyond. It was one of the first projects that was funded by European Commission to have a snapshot of what's happening in rural mobility, from different points of view. At this particular moment, probably many of you know that the European Commission spent a lot of resources in urban mobility, and definitely in the last 30 years, I'm acting in this field. So in the last 30 years, European Commission supported massively the urban mobility. We are extremely happy that rural mobility now is part of their agenda. It's put a lot of priority on this, and SMARTA organizes at this moment a series of webinars to present some of the preliminary results that we had, but we would like to also to interact closely with you and try to find out more about you. And if you have particular questions about rural mobility, please do it. Now, if my colleagues will help me, we have this series of webinars. This is the first webinar where we try to look about the issues that support the mobility to how mobility will support the rural communities to become stronger rural communities. And in 2 weeks' time, we have another webinar looking at some practical experience across Europe in rural mobility. On 15th of July, we'll finish this series of webinars with a more or less a focused approach on the characteristics of the communities, that will allow for developing successful mobility schemes. Now, a few practical aspects, if you allow me. During this webinar, you have the possibility to interact with us through the question. Yeah, this is you will see there, my colleagues prepared this one in the tutorial. Yes, you have a question and you can put a question to us. We strongly encourage you to take advantage of this hour and of the panelists to put a lot of questions. We will have 2 questions during the this hour, we will try to interact with you, and of course we will be very grateful if you bear with us in case we do not reply to all your questions. We record them and we will contact them later on. All the presentations and all the record of this this event will be made public immediately after. Thank you very much. And Donna, if you can put on the first question for us for the poll. Thank you. Yes, what we wanted to find out, because we have, as I said, we have a very good number of attendees, you know, from across Europe and beyond. We have from US, from Jordan. Thank you very much for all those that registered to us from Tunis. I noticed. Please press one of the button to tell us why did you join this webinar. If you are interested in mobility issues in general, or you work in rural mobility, or in the rural areas, in the rural development, just give us few information about us. We allow for a few more seconds because many of you are still registering. We have almost 100 persons in this call at this moment. Thank you so much for this. Now we can stop the vote, and if Doina can show us the results, it will be very, very interesting. I see here, yeah, the majority of you are working in the rural mobility or have a huge interest in the mobility issues. Very, very interesting. This is very encouraging for us as a project, and we'll speak about this further on. Yeah, without many other let's say delays, I would like to invite as you notice, we have very good speakers today. We have Doina, if you can go on the next slide, if you thank you for this. Thank you. Yes, these are our panelists. Probably you noticed from the communication that we have done with you. We have Enrique Nieto from INIARDI that will try to present a bit the program of smart villages. We have my dear colleague Andrea Lorenzini, who will present the SMARTA project, you know, the host of this webinar and the series, and our very good colleague Eleni Kaliou, sorry for this, Eleni, that will present our sister project, you know, the demonstration project of rural mobility. Yeah. Without delaying too much, because we don't have too much time at our available, Enrique, if the microphone and the camera are yours.
Okay, I just need to share my screen and find what I can do. Okay.
Yes. You can share your screen. Just to tell a few words about Enrique. He is working very closely with us in SMARTA. He is working for AIDL, the European Association for Information on Local Development, and he supports very much the INIARDI network, yeah, and he actually leads the thematic group within INIARDI on smart villages. So Enrique, thank you very much for this and for accepting to join us. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. To talk about the results of a thematic group that we in the European Network for Rural Development have been managing for the last 3 years on the topic on smart villages as a new concept emerging in Europe for supporting community-led innovation in rural areas. And of course, within this concept, mobility has played an important role and is one of the focus areas in which we have done a lot of work during these last 3 years, and particularly in collaboration with the colleagues from the SMARTA Project and the colleagues from MEMEX. So today I would like to present you a bit a general description of what this concept is about. So it's going to be tough to describe in 10 minutes the whole work that we did in 3 years, but I would like to grasp a little bit on the concept so you get a general idea if you never heard of it, because it's a bit different to the concept of smart cities, which might be more familiar to many of you. And then I would like to give you a bit of the results of the work that we conducted within this thematic group. So without delaying anymore, there is an EU working definition that in a way puts this concept more on practical terms. So basically, when we refer to smart villages, we refer to communities in rural area that want to implement innovative solutions to some of the problems and challenges and opportunities that they have. The smart villages concept relies a lot on a participatory approach and to basically improve the economic and social and environmental status of the area by mobilizing the local assets. Within this approach, many of you might think that this is all digital. It's not. Digital in many occasions can be the solution, but also we found that there are other approaches that can bring solutions to rural areas, for instance, based on social innovation. So it's not a prerequisite to apply digital technology in this case. Here I would like just to give you some of the key messages that emerged during the last 3 years. So the first one is the one I'm saying. There is no one model to say that this is a smart village, and therefore it is about digital and social innovation, the two of them. Often these smart villages and these initiatives start small, are led by the local people and builds up on cooperation among them. It is very important this point that we are not talking about, if you are familiar with the rural development policy, with mini leader or community-led local development strategies, but rather trying to support cooperation among key actors in villages that want to work around a specific challenge. They build small, and with this small initiative, they're able to leverage further investment from other sources. So it is very important that we are not talking about the strategy that duplicates existing structures. So what Smart Villages is about the action, so not duplication of strategies. So when Smart Villages emerge and when there are new things being supported and implemented, they need to improve what already exists and not to duplicate. And most important, it's about, at the policy level, it's about offering fast and flexible support to local communities to implement innovation. So as you see, it's a very broad concept. They have clear elements on cooperation, on innovation that are there, and therefore the mobility, it's an important field of area. To put it into practice, I would like you to get to know one initiative that in a way is considered is applying the Smart Villages approach. Probably some of you might know about this project. I think it was also incorporated within a SMART one as a good practice. It's called Resopus, implemented in France. Basically, this is a digital innovation that based on a cooperation between an IT company, municipalities, and other actors. They managed to develop an app that integrates or allows people to support mobility within rural areas based on hitchhiking. So they created a network of hitchhiking points, and with this app, people are able to coordinate themselves or to pick up themselves. Of course, this project also has a very strong social component because it allows people without any means to move or to own a car, or where if they are in an area where there is not enough public transport, which in many cases this is the case in rural areas, they allow them to have some means for mobility. So again, you can identify some of the components I was talking about: cooperation, locally led, innovation. In this case, digital, but it has a very strong social component. This project at the end it's an independent project that again it relies a lot as well on support from the public municipalities to maintain this network of hitchhiking points. And in the map you can see that this initiative is growing rapidly across France. So it started in a specific area, and now you can see in the map in all the areas where they are now placed. So what I want to show here in this slide is that these smart villages initiatives often relies on on implementation of a series of steps in order to reach your outcome. So you might start by conducting some analysis of the area to identify your assets. You might need to implement some training to get some skills, do some technical or feasibility studies to get to know what a potential solution that you can apply in your area. You might need to get some research contacts and information and knowledge to get to know what you can do, what's new out there, what it fits your purpose. You might start with piloting your existing initiative or your initiative, support some small scale and so on and so forth. So this might keep growing. I just put here this slide because as Lucia mentioned, mobility it's in the agenda for the European Commission. The European Green Deal in a way shows us the direction, the policy direction that the Commission will follow in the next year. And one of the items is definitely accelerating the shift to sustainable and smart mobilities. And rural areas have a lot to say here and can play a strong role to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal within this area of smart mobility. We see that mobility issues, and probably my colleague Andrea in his presentation might elaborate further, but we identified that, as well as Lucia mentioned, that at the policy level there are no specific frameworks for rural mobility. While this is an important component to address and support and boost economic development, social development, and as well as the EU Green Deal is mentioning, sustainable and environmental development and sustainability. So I would like to present here, these are some of the ideas where smart village could look like in terms of mobility. And this idea came and are reflected, or you can find more information in a briefing that was developed within this thematic group. And coordinated and developed with the support of the colleagues from MEMEX and SMARTA 1. So they identified that in areas like shared mobility, conventional public transport, mini hubs or interchange points close to train stations and bus stops, or as well a network of voluntary drivers are potential areas where they have identified already good practices and that the rural areas could become smarter in the future. But these are not all, and as in any innovation process, there might be others that might come up within this process. You can find more information in this briefing that is available on a dedicated portal on smart villages, where we have these thematic briefings, for instance, this one on rural mobility, but as well others on, for instance, community renewable energy communities, and as well orientations for other policymakers on how they could support smart villages in the future. And for instance, here you might find guidance and orientation on how local actors can get involved in mobility projects, how to assess the mobility needs at the local level, how to identify what works best in a specific context, and how to prioritize among competing needs that you might have when developing these initiatives. So I don't go more in detail. You have all the information in the briefing, which is very short and easy to read. And almost to conclude, I would like to mention something important developed within this TG to help everyone to, in a way, assess or guide you to assess whether something is close to smart villages, particularly at the policy level and when developing policy frameworks. Basically, the main point is that there has to be resources allocated for local facilitation and animation if we really want these projects to emerge locally. There is definitely a need to improve access to knowledge at the local level, but also across Europe. So one of the ideas emerging in some of the countries is developing these rural and knowledge information systems in the countries, where mobility could be one of the fields where these networks of knowledge and could be developed. There is definitely a need for flexible finance for these communities to be able to implement this series of steps to support the Smart Villages initiatives. And there has to be at the policy level better alignment with the investment measures. So these communities that are able to start this process and these small initiatives and steps to become a smart villages can access as well financial resources from other means. And of course, there has to be a strong and flexible cooperation. So the policy framework should allow that. And finally, to conclude, I just would like to give you some of the ideas that are having some member states on how they could support smart villages in the future common agriculture policy strategic plans that are at the moment being developed. So for instance, in Finland, they plan to support cooperation projects at the village level, so 1 or 2 villages cooperating on a wide range of fields, so mobility could be one of them. Then they will have another type of cooperation project which might be more at the regional level, so in a larger scale. And then they plan to support a network of innovation brokers that are able precisely to connect these local needs with the knowledge sources and the innovation sources, so the innovation is boosted locally. And again, mobility could be one of these fields. And again, in terms of policy terms, they apply to develop simplified cost options so that they offer flexible finance to the villages to implement this project. Another in Poland, other ideas as well, which is innovative here, is that they plan to give support to preparatory support, so giving financial means to villages to come together and be able to elaborate a strategy, assess what they need, and then on a second round of calls, support the implementation of the specific plans they will do. Here they could use different measures within this CAP strategic plan. So mainly there is one to support this type of cooperation projects, and then leader also play an important role in all these ideas. And then what we were discussing as well, that these interventions are as well aligned with the interventions focusing more on the hardcore and bigger investment within these plans. As well, they want to boost and create a network of innovation brokers, basically formed with existing bodies, so they are not creating new ones. So they will extend and use the advisory services they have already in the country, the network of local action groups, the national rural network created at national level, to support these villages, to animate them and provide, again, this support. And linkages to innovation. And again, flexible finance provided through simplified cost option. And to conclude, all this information, you can find it available on the Smart Villages portal that I mentioned in the website of the ENRD. I would like also to encourage you to join the Smart Villages community that we have on Facebook, and we have already more than 1,600 members, and it's quite active in terms of sharing information. And in the portal, in this community, you can find all the products that we have developed, including orientations to policymakers and implementing on how they could support smart villages in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erika. Very interesting presentation. And I think I liked in particular the fact that you stressed that the smart village is totally different concept than the smart city one. So it's very important to address very correctly the particular needs and the particular expectation and the community and the area that we are addressing. So thank you once again very much. I just remind everybody that I will take questions, specific questions for Erika and for the other panelists at the end. So we go a bit quicker through the presentations now, and at the end of the session we will have a quick session of discussions with our panelists. I encourage you to, while the next speaker Andrea Laurentini is preparing, I encourage you to put a lot of questions in the using the question facility, and please refer to the speaker that you would like to address the question, or if you have a general question. So Andrea, my colleague Andrea, if you are prepared. Yes, Andrea is
Yes,
my dear colleague from the MEMEX team. We are working together in SMARTA project. He acts as the day-to-day, let's say, contact point for us all in from MEMEX. He has an experience in public transportation, and he looks also into the rural area. He will present you our project, and he will try to give you a glimpse of our, let's say, preliminary insights from the research we have done until now. So Andrea, the microphone and the camera is yours. It's very difficult to say. It's not your floor, it's your microphone.
yeah. Thank you very much, Lucia, for this nice introduction. And I think it's interesting also to follow the good presentation from Enrique with this one that is more focused on rural mobility. That is what SMARTA is about. So just to start, what's the context? As I said before, the SMARTA project is on rural mobility, and thinking with a broader perspective on rural areas, it's clear that there are more than 100 million people living there. There is probably more need of mobility in rural areas due to that of the dispersed demand and the services that are more located into urban centers. And there is usually in different rural areas across Europe low public transport provision, so there is clearly also high dependency on the private car. So if that's the context, what are the issues? The SMARTA project identified three major issues, and I would like just to touch a little bit the first one, that is on mobility. So if we take this sentence, how to develop daily life without a car, or if I would like to ask you, is it possible nowadays to live in a rural area without a car? I don't know, what do you think? And I don't know if this could be a sort of privilege, or rather a principle or a right, or a matter of transport justice. So it's clear that this deals with people who can't use a car, or people who can afford a car, or people who don't want to use the car. So it's clear that when we face the issue of mobility in rural area, this, as also Enrique said before, we are also dealing with other important aspects. In parallel, there are clearly other aspects that involve rural mobility. So the traffic generated in rural areas, so the traffic on the urban roads, the parking right system, and so forth, and also the problem related to the environment, GHG emission, pollution, and so forth. So probably mobility in rural areas needs more attention than the past. As also Lucia said before, there has been quite a big attention to urban areas with sustainable urban mobility plans, policy paper, and so forth. And there has been less attention to rural areas, although 1/4 of the population lives there, so the same of 40 largest metropolitan areas in Europe. There are major issues, including depopulation, austerity measure, aging population, and so forth. And so we think that there has been quite few attention to that, but now it's really the time to rethink, but probably to act. That's the title of this webinar also. So the SMARTA project is this initiative from the European Commission DG Move, funded by the European Parliament, that aims to find ways to ensure sustainable mobility interconnected with public transport. Here you can see the SMARTA consortium led by MEMEX, and where the consortium made by 5 different partners, and 3 major activities: the research part, the demonstration, and the engagement. And the final part that is the SMARTA will try to develop policy guideline and recommendation. So although the time is quite short, I will try to enter a little bit in detail within each of these 3 major strands of activities. So just to briefly introduce what's the landscape of rural shared mobility. We can identify 3 major characteristics. The first are the flexible transport services, so flexible route DRT and door-to-door DRT. Then there are the ride-sharing system and services that spans from shared taxi, carpooling, organized hitchhiking, and so forth. And there the asset sharing, so mostly the car sharing, but also some forms of e-bike sharing. And in parallel, there are all the supporting ITS and technology system. So within this landscape, SMARTA in the first year tried to make a sort of analysis of the framework within which rural shared mobility is implemented, developing this kind of insight paper. So 7 to 10 pages each, and these are all available in the SMARTA website, that briefly try to describe the framework within which rural shared mobility is implemented. And in parallel, we made also an overview of good practices. So just to share with you this kind of analysis that we made by a cross comparison of this insight paper, we tried to answer to 10 key questions or issues, and here I just reported a few of them. And what we find throughout this analysis, that's found from which is the layer of government at which rural mobility is determined, or if there is a specific policy on rural mobility in rural area and things like that. The results that popped up is that there is total an absence of policy for rural mobility. There are few obligations to provide rural mobility services, and the existing framework are not leading to developing rural shared mobility. So although it's clear that there are different frameworks for each of the European countries, it emerged that there are similar issues that are present in all of that. So in parallel, as I said before, we also made a sort of analysis of good practices in rural shared mobility. This is just a cluster that we made in terms of demand responsive transport, the one in yellow, the shared mobility in green, the rail and bus integrated public transport network, there's some kind of public-private partnerships, or what we call hybrid cases, and then rural mobility program. So we identified more than 30 different cases, and we also developed a summary report that again is available on our website, where you can have an overview about each of these good practice. It's clear that the detailed version of the good practice is also available on the SMARTA website, but that report tried to make a sort of broader vision on this kind of good practices. These are just a few examples. We tried to analyze what were the barriers and challenges for the implementation of these good practices, and we also made a sort of recommendation that were coming from each of the good practice. So this was, I think, more or less all about the research part, and the second part is what we call the pilot demonstration. So SMARTA is currently engaging and collaborating with 13 different sites across Europe, and afterward there will be also a specific presentation by Eleni on the SMARTA 2 project, with whom we are strongly collaborating. And what SMARTA in particular is trying to do is try to assess what are the buyers or the drivers for the success of an implementation of this kind of transport initiative. We develop a specific evaluation framework that is also on our website, that is made by 4 layers, and we are trying to apply this kind of evaluation within all of them. Just to introduce the different sites, there are 4 sites that belongs, we can say belongs, but we are collaborating with them to the SMARTA 2 project. They are in Austria, Greece, Romania, and Portugal. There are 4 pilots from SMARTA, we could say, that are France, Italy, Germany, and Ireland. And then there are also 5 in-depth good practices, as you can see from this picture. So to just introduce in a slide each of the characteristics, it's clear that our network try to embrace different kind of transport services. You can see there, for example, there is a community-based transport service in 2 different areas in Germany. So in the Kusel district and in Dresden-Stromer, within the Bürgerbus initiative, there is a focus on the organized hitchhiking, as Enrique said before, for the Rexopus Association and the Rexopus Transport Services. And in particular, we are trying to evaluate 2 new services near to Montpellier. Then there is a demand responsive transport service integrated with other shared mobility in Kilkenny in Ireland. And then there is an innovative open doors transport scheme for children and students in Toscana Sud, where also a specific ITS platform has been implemented. This is an overview of the SMARTA 2, but I would like to skip this slide because Eleni afterwards will maybe give you some further detail on that. So briefly also in terms of the what we call the in-depth good practices, we have also these 5 different cases. One is an on-demand transport service near to Valirana, close to Barcelona, Spain. There is the concept of mobility hub in the Groningen-Drenthe province. And then there are 3 different pilots from another Interreg project where we are strongly collaborated, that is Mamba. And so there is a ride-sharing application, an on-demand transport service, and also drive pooling in Bielsko-Biała in Poland. So this is more or less an overview of our 13 different sites. And finally, last but not least, is the part of the engagement, where what we are trying to do in parallel to these research and demonstration activities is also trying to develop a sort of network for rural mobility. Here you can see a number of initiatives where the SMARTA project has been or is being collaborating with. As mentioned, Mamba, we went to the European Rural Parliament in the Asturias last year. There is the collaboration with the European Network for Rural Development, the Smart Village, as mentioned by Enrique, the Inclusion Age 2020 project, Last Mile, Euromontana, Rumobil, and there are other projects that deals with rural mobility, not so much as urban, but there are a few of them. And so it's clear that for us, it's a sort of fundamental part for our project. First of all, to raising awareness, but after that, for also consulting and involving different kind of stakeholders to really develop this kind of policy guideline. So this was the first workshop that we made last January last year, and where we tried to validate our preliminary findings. It was joined by around, I don't remember very well, but 80 different people, transport authorities, practitioners, and local government, and so forth. And there is the SMARTA final conference is planned for the end of this year, where we will try to sum up the results of these 2.5 years of activities. And we also seek to meet the European Parliament for also sharing our recommendation. So as a conclusion, the outcome is this: we are trying to target these users, as you can see, so regional and local authorities, the European Parliament and the Commission, and also practitioner and public transport operator or shared mobility operators. And we will produce policy guideline in terms of clearly dedicated policy for rural mobility, how to integrate shared mobility with public transport, how the organization of rural transport service could be developed, and so forth. And finally, just to say that we are not indifferent to the COVID-19 issue. So SMARTA is also trying to track to which extent the rural share mobility services into the SMARTA network of 13 sites have been reduced or suspended during this lockdown or the post-COVID phases and things like that, to see whether there are other initiatives that are emerging. These, for example, could be bringing food or medicines to vulnerable users, and to see also how and whether all the existing transport services are fully reopened or other are not to do that. And this is done to try to answer to this question: what are the impact of the restriction measure for rural areas? Will people be still willing to share their vehicles, to share the rides, the assets, and things like that? And finally, I would like to invite you to also have a look at our website, where we also started to upload the first results of our project activities. There is the full set of insight paper, the full set of the good practices, and the report on rural mobility good practice, the evaluation framework, and so forth. So I will strongly invite you to see the website, and hope that this could be of interest for you. And that's all for me. Thanks all.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Very good presentation as always. Just to mention that SMARTA is eager to work with many of you. We have already on SMARTA website a place where you can, if you go there, there is a link, clear link that you can submit your own ideas, and if you want to work with us as a good practice, we are very happy to work with you there. So please go on our website and you'll find many more information than Andrea mentioned here. And while it's thank you, Andrea, and while Eleni is preparing for the next presentation, just mentioning that the SMARTA is looking beyond all these activities and all the persons that are mentioned like this. We have very good connections with many of you, and some of the representatives of the good practices, the pilots that we are working with are here, and we thank you very much for your support and your kind collaboration during the project. And we saw so many new faces, so we hope that we can work closely with you. I can say faces, but in fact are names. A nice face now is on the screen is our colleague Eleni Karakaliou from SMARTA 2. She represents the coordinators of this project, a project that was born based on, let's say, first results that we produced in SMARTA, and the Commission was so keen to take forward the first ideas that we have produced. So they developed a new program, and I'm very happy that Eleni and her colleagues are with us now. She will present us some of their ideas and the projects that they want to do. And she is with QPlan, and she's an urban planning engineer. She has quite an experience in research, and she has been involved in quite a lot of European projects. Eleni, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind words and nice presentation. I'm happy that I see so many attendees today. It's really encouraging for our work. Already Andrea mentioned about the SMARTA 2 project. And I'm sorry. Okay. Some of the challenges I present you here, I think you are all familiar with. Rural areas present specific conditions that require further support, achievement of efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability on transport. And we see that the traditional transport systems seem to be inefficient to address the needs of the entire range of the population, and especially those residing in rural areas. Something that we have identified so far is a common key challenge, or a common attitude, if I'm allowed to say so, that people in rural areas are very keen on using their car, even for very short distances, and even though public transport can cover this need. European Union in general is committed to addressing the mobility needs of people living in rural areas and foster their participation in all aspects of economic and social life. In this context, the SMARTA project was funded, representing an opportunity to conceptualize and identify and pilot smart rural transport solutions. To measure the contribution of smart transport solutions to the issues faced by rural areas, SMARTA, as Andrea mentioned earlier, created an evaluation framework to assess how sustainable, shared, and on-demand mobility solutions can help enhance the travel experience of rural population. And here, SMARTA 2 comes to put this evaluation framework into practice in 4 sites across Europe. The objective is to create an evidence base that will allow the extrapolation of the pilot area's experience to other rural areas across Europe. As I said, The aim is to complement the SMARTA project by deploying and implementing, monitoring and evaluating 4 demonstrators of sustainable shared mobility interconnected with public transport, including multimodal travel information services in Austria, Greece, Romania, and Portugal, while providing continuous expert support to all demonstrators for organizing, raising awareness, events, and behavioral incentives and nudges to facilitate the uptake of the pilot services by the locals and contribute to the sustainable use of the services beyond the funding period. Our project has selected the 4 demonstrator sites. I'm sorry, but there is a delay while changing my slides. Okay, now it's better. Thank you. So we have Aveiro in Portugal, East Tyrol in Austria, Brasov in Romania, and Trikala in Greece. These are all characterized rural areas where we will implement pilot services that are either the continuation of existing projects or initiatives or are completely new services. These demonstrator sites have been selected as they include good geographical coverage representing areas with different rural mobility needs. They are complementary in terms of their target audience. We have rates from people traveling to the urban areas for work, to elder people who cannot drive for themselves, to students and younger adults. In all 4 areas, there are already ongoing projects and initiatives that aim to tackle the identified mobility challenges in rural areas, and all demonstrator site partners, Municipality of Trikala, Municipality of Agueda, Brasov Metropolitan Agency, and the Regional Mobility Organization of Tyrol have established and long-term connections with their stakeholders and citizens communities, which have collectively identified their areas' shared rural mobility needs. I will present you briefly what we are going to test in every SMARTA 2 site. East Tyrol will top up its existing car sharing system with 4 new stations and 4 cars. Car sharing will be linked to the public transport system through an integrated ticketing and information system and will be offered at advantageous prices for the duration of the project. So in East Tyrol, we have car sharing, and it's an existing service that will be extended. Moving on, in Trikala, in Greece, we are going to test an entirely new service and introduce to the citizens to a completely new idea of carpooling. I would say that this is a practice that already is being done in rural areas. In Greece, people in rural areas using carpooling, but they are not totally aware of the term, or they are not familiar to digital means of doing it. So in the municipality of Trikala, we will develop an online application that allows citizens to access, first of all, real-time public transport information, along with available carpooling options to facilitate the connection between the rural communities and the urban area of the city of Trikala. This app will include an on-demand service to send requests for buses or taxis, and the booking system for services to the services that are located in the central square of Trikala, such as wheelchair scooters or bicycles. In this way, people will be able to plan their trip to reach to the city from the rural communities by using multiple modes of transport, and while arriving at the city, they can continue their trip in the city again by using sustainable mobility solutions that are available in the city center. In Agda, in Portugal, the focus is given in bicycles. The existing electric bike sharing system is expanding by installing 5 e-bike parks and 15 e-bikes to help the connection between the rural communities, the train stations, and schools. Here, the target audiences are mostly the students. EGDA will also develop a multimodal journey planner as desktop and mobile application to allow users to book online their e-bikes. The idea there is that someone from the rural community can take the e-bike, arrive to the train station, take the train, go to their final destination, and then use again bikes to go back to their home place. Finally, in Brasov, again here we test the concept of carpooling, like in Trikala. A carpooling platform here, instead of an application that we have in Trikala, will be set up and enabling users to offer and book shared trips to the public transport terminals at the periphery of Brasov or to other public transport hubs. And this way, to help people to use this service, Brasov is designing also an incentive scheme offered by public and private enterprises. For example, people that will use the platform to and the services of the platform, then we'll have a free parking place in the city of Brasov for a limited time of period. Regarding the SMARTA approach, what is interesting about SMARTA? It's a bottom-up approach because through dedicated workshops, citizens and stakeholders finalized the concept and how all the demonstrators would run, accommodated to their needs. And also we designed some behavioral incentives together with financial ones in order to increase the uptake of these services by the locals. It's we are all aware, I believe, that when you are trying to implement something new, it's always difficult to convince people, and it's difficult to make people change their attitude. So we try with some kind of incentives to make the demonstrators have a greater impact. The spillover effects on the local economies, that besides providing cost-efficient and environmentally friendly transport solutions, the new services are likely to improve the continuous flow of citizens from surrounding rural areas towards the city centers. Moreover, as we use and test the evaluation framework of SMARTA, we apply a methodology in order to collect both quantitative and qualitative evidence to learn what works and why it didn't work in all of our 4 rural areas. And these findings at the end of the project and the pilot period will be discussed in regional policy debates in order to identify possible actions that could be taken at the regional and super-regional level to support sustainable shared rural mobility solutions in the future and in more areas around Europe. Drawing from the demonstrators' experiences, the project will create a toolkit of good practices and lessons learned and recommendations to support the implementation of smart mobility interventions in more rural settings across Europe. The project started in September 2019 and will last until March 2021. We are in very close collaboration with SMARTA. They support and they are with us on this implementation of the evaluation framework that they have developed. And I would like to say, since also Andrea referred to it, that COVID indeed is a huge challenge, because what we are trying to do is to make people use more sustainable solutions, or use the cars to drive more people. And this is challenging in these days. I would also like to invite you to follow our news and activities through our channels. And thank you very much.
Eleni, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting, and I think it gave a glimpse of the activities that you started to do at this moment in SMARTA, and we are really looking forward for some results, and we to work closely with you for doing this. Now, because we have very little time at our only 5 minutes. We are set only for 1 hour. This one, I make another announcement that these questions that you put there, and if you do not have an immediate answer during this event, we will contact and we provide you the answer, and follow us on the channels that we will provide all the information. Now, can I invite you again, with the support of my colleagues, to reply very quickly to a question that may generate a bit of interest, and it will help us very much in the project and tailoring other let's say discussions and interactions with yourselves. We had 3 very good presentations, and I think in Enrique's presentation, in the first one, I just realized that more or less the same issues that he mentioned in one of his slides are here. It's very important to understand what will influence a good rural mobility strategy, and we consider that some the investment in the physical infrastructure and even the digitalization of rural areas could be an important aspect. It's the integration of the policies for rural communities. It is that we know very well that everything is working in silos at this moment, so probably integration of the policies for rural communities will be useful. Of course, the fragmentation of the stakeholders probably should be better organized, this decision-making process and the structure for doing the decisions, and of course, the create an, let's say, flawless stream for funding for a rural project. And I think all of the presentations mentioned the dialogue, either with the end user, with inhabitants in rural communities, but also with the stakeholders and those ones that they have interest in a rural area. So I think the improved social dialogue, again, could be a very important factor for rural mobility strategy. We would like to know what is your opinion, and we leave 2 more seconds to find out your views, and I think I'll close it now. Thank you very much. Doina or Lucian, if you can put it on the screen. Perfect. Yes, these are the results. So I'm very pleased, because this is one of the areas that I'm working to, and it's the integration of the policies and creating, the better links between different areas and policies and domains that traditionally they are not working. This is the first one that you mentioned, and the physical infrastructure and digitalization of rural areas is the second one. And I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for this, because again, it's very important when we think about rural mobility. We have to think about the actual infrastructure for it. Sometimes we do not have the same funds and possibilities as in the case of the urban areas. So we will provide you this information, but I want very quickly to ask my colleagues, panelists, to come quickly on the screen and to join me on the screen, not on the scene, but on the screen, to take a few questions. I think we had once quite a good number of questions, but I think it was a need of clarifications from one of my colleagues that for Enrique, that Rezo Pus for example, it's good. It was first, but from the social innovation point of view, I think digital wasn't the let's say the possibility, the enabler for the social innovation. Could be a question for all of you. How can we collectively support the integration of rural mobility in the planned strategy for smart mobility? So it's coming from the question to how we can do this one. Most probably to just focus on urban area. It's Marie Cloteau. Sorry for if my pronunciation, Marie. So please, if any of you would like to make a quick comment.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Marika, and I think it's very interesting. That's indeed what we are trying to do with SMARTA. I mean, first of all, to open a discussion with different stakeholders to really put together a strategy for rural. We are not, there is no silver bullet, there is not a single policy, but what we are trying to what was emerged by the insight paper analysis, that there is the need for a rural mobility policy. Then it will be the responsibility by the regional or national authorities to develop according to the local needs of each different country. But that what we are really trying to push the Commission towards, to develop some kind of policy, and in parallel to develop some kind of integrated planning documents.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Enrique and Leni, if you would like to make a comment or reply.
I think Andrea's answer was clear, and he covered me. It is not an easy task, of course. It is very challenging, and usually the focus is being given in the urban areas, since the citizens and most of the population is concentrated there. But I think that efforts towards these directions are being made, and in the next years we will have some results that will be very promising and convincing.
Thank you. Enrique.
Sorry, I'm muted. I would like to add two things. I agree with my colleagues. The strategic approach, probably at a higher level, to put these issues on the agenda is highly relevant. I think the first step, it's already there in the Green Deal, but again, this needs translation into different countries. The other aspect would be when we talk about strategies at the more local level, and here I would be a bit more careful. Because the risk with the strategies is that you have it, you put it, and then goes to the shelf and nobody used it. And what's basically needed at the local level is action. So these national strategies need to support, in a flexible manner, action coming at the local level. Not to focus just on the tool or the enabler, like just digitization for the sake of digitization, like the participant just mentioned, but identifying what is needed and enable communities to really put the solution that they need, whatever this solution it is, which might be digital or non-digital. So it needs to start on the ground. Here, what seems challenging is that mobility is not an area that rural actors have a long history working about. If we are frank, the policies at the moment have supported other areas in rural development, and mostly focusing on tourism or agriculture, on the agri-food sector. Issues beyond and related to these basic services that everybody needs are beyond the experience of these local actors. So in addition to the strategy, I think this aspect on the knowledge, on the skills, and on the capacities of the rural actors to really implement action in terms of mobility is also important. Not only at the local level, sometimes it's even regional and local authorities that do not have that capacity and even the competences. So this needs to be trickled down, and at the local level really just offer support and in a flexible manner, so they don't get caught into these financial traps at the end on subsidies and grants and etc. So that would be my comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can't agree more with your comment, Enrique, because I think sometimes it's very easy to come from top to down. I think we have to start looking from a bottom-up approach. You have to have this view too, and I think more and more it is a need nowadays to look in a participatory approach all these strategies and let's say projects that we want to implement, irrespective of the level, especially from rural areas. We have to take into account one aspect that is very important and came out from your let's say presentation. We are talking about innovation, but innovation has a total different definition when we talk about the rural environment, so in the rural community. So we have to be very, very careful how we define this innovation, and has a total different definition compare with others. And I think even here we have to find the innovation in how we talk with the final, let's say, final users, and why not with those ones that are making the decisions. And I think one of the important aspects that we have done in SMARTA, we didn't took only this approach of collecting the evidence that supports a successful implementation of rural mobility schemes, but we are looking at the wider context, at the wider, let's say, benefits in having that a rural community has by implementing in or in, let's say, in investing in rural mobility. So I'm afraid that we are 6 minutes late. I would like to stop the discussions here, with the regret that there are some good questions, but definitely will be a reply, because there are some questions about the digital gap between the urban and rural areas, and I think this is a very, very important aspect that we have to take into account. There are aspects how we look at the nudging, let's say, techniques, because in urban area we have developed these nudging techniques for a long time, and I think probably for rural area we have to adapt or be innovative indeed to define new ways to create these new nudging aspects. And of course we have to understand how we tackle and how we develop rural mobility schemes to take into account all type of activities at the local level, especially in rural areas. Sometimes there are leisure, not only agriculture, there are leisure, tourism, or simple, recreational activities. So all these questions that we have received here, we will put together, and definitely we will reply through website and through other channels. Please follow us. If our colleagues will allow me to present the next webinar that we will do in two weeks time. It will concentrate more on if you go on this one, yes, it's on 1st of July. We are trying to give you some concrete examples from different mobility, let's say, solutions that we are working with, pilots like Andrea called, or in-depth good practices, or different other names that we are doing, but they are practical solutions in different areas. So we will try to show you some examples and generate a new dialogue. This time the dialogue will be longer, so you have more time to put more questions and interact with more people. The third one will look at as I mentioned, the third one will look at the social aspects and the characteristics of those ones that are using the rural mobility in schemes. Thank you very much for your presence. We had a very, very good let's say, presence in this webinar. We had about more than 100 people, and they resisted. And I looked at the indicator, the attention of them, that it was very high. Thank you very much for your questions. We will reply to you, and please follow us on our website and on the social channels and social media channels, and we will provide you more information. Thank you very much, my dear colleagues, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for your...
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.